Tera Dower, Candy Mama, welcome to the Pre-Trail Podcast. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You've spent a few days on the couch, as we were just discussing. Obviously, you just impressed the entire universe with your amazing FKT performance on the Appalachian Trail. We're going to talk all about it, but maybe first and foremost, how are you feeling physically, mentally, spiritually as you emerge from this incredible adventure?
Yeah, I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts. Like, body feels okay. I do have like somewhat of a glute injury, like a little bit of a glute injury. And like brain fog has finally lifted, but I am extremely thankful for like the response from this FKT. Like, oh, it's so great because, you know, I'm partnering with Girls on the Run. There's donations going that way. You know, there's a lot of visibility to women in the endurance realm of the sport. So like, that's really exciting. But like personally, I think it's like, I'm overwhelmed, definitely overwhelmed. And I was on trail for 40 days with my crew, with my little crew. And I find myself some days just wishing I was back there doing such a simple thing as just hiking and running 50 some miles a day. Obviously, I wish it was less and I could just be out there having fun, but definitely miss it for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's just like a beautiful simplicity to that life, even if it is exhausting. And of course, we are going to talk all about it. Tera, I start these podcasts with all of our new guests in the same place, which is a question that is hopefully just inspires some introspection. That question is, what makes you, you? For those who are unfamiliar with Tera or who were unfamiliar with you before the Appalachian Trail, give us a sense of who you are at your essence.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a lady who enjoys being on the trails and running really far distances. That's pretty much it. I love thru hiking. I love FKTs. I love ultra marathons just because of the adventure of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I like snacks. I like candy. Some call me Candy Mama. That's a pretty big part of it. I love spending time with people on trails. So, that's pretty much it.
So, but where does that come from? Like when were you exposed to this world of adventure and why did it speak to you in the way that it did?
Yeah, I think I was first exposed when I was a freshman in college when I watched the Appalachian Trail documentary by National Geographic. And I've always been at the core of who I am. I'm somebody who seeks challenges. I'm a big, challenger. And I watched that and was like, okay, I want to thru hike, and started this entire history of just my history with the Appalachian Trail. And then that kind of graduated to FKTs, which then graduated into the 100-mile ultra marathons, then graduated into like doing, the 100Ks and the faster races and trying to get into these bigger races like Hardrock and Western States. But then, somehow I found myself back doing this FKT on the trail that started it all.
Yeah. It does feel like it was a return to the origin, a return to the source. And let's come back and talk about that. I was reading an article about you in Yahoo Sports, and they said that on the plaque where you finished the AT, it says something to the effect of the AT is a footpath for those who seek fellowship in the wilderness.
Yeah. Love
does
that.
For those of us who haven't spent a lot of time on the trail, does that resonate for you, or were you seeking fellowship with the wilderness when you found that Nat Geo documentary?
Yeah, I think I was seeking a challenge for sure, because hiking for 6 months, that's usually how long it takes somebody to do a thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. Hiking for 6 months and backpacking and having all the gear on your back seemed like a definite challenge. I think I don't think I was fully prepared when I set off in 2017 initially for a thru hike. I don't think I was seeking the fellowship with the wilderness. And that's part of the reason why I quit 80 miles in. I don't think I had my expectations set up. I don't think I was there for the right reasons. And in 2019, I went back and I felt like I was much more prepared, and definitely found that that fellowship with the wilderness. There was a lot of time to do that. It took me 5 months and 10 days to get to Katahdin.
And this time it was only 40 days. I want to talk more about that failed attempt in 2017 here in a minute, but I wanted to first ask you about your mom too, because I was looking through some of your YouTube videos and it seems like your mom has thru-hiked the trail. And I know she was part of the crew chump change through the duration of this FKT attempt. In what way has your mom contributed to the person and athlete that you are?
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to ponder that. I saw a comment on one of my posts talking about my mom, and it really like resonated with me a lot. Somebody said something to the effect of like, you have to be a special kind of woman to raise somebody who, you know, goes after this kind of thing. You have to be a special type of person to raise a woman to, you know, do something like this. And that got me thinking about who she is and what kind of influence she's had in my life. And we come from like my grandma, her mom, and her mom, my great grandmother, who's passed by now. But we are a line of very, I wouldn't say stubborn, but headstrong women. And I think it's just this line of women who just do what we want. And, you know, we don't really take no for an answer. And if somebody tells us no, we'll find a way around it. So I think it's like this long line of very strong-willed, determined women. But yeah, she didn't actually thru hike. She actually made it 700 miles and made it through a lot of adversity to make it 700 miles. She is incredible. And what she did was incredible. I won't go into her story. That's her story to share, but man, did she...
come on. I want to hear the story. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, she didn't have the best nutrition out there. And she attempted to eat a lot of things and struggled. Anyone who's done like endurance feats, you know, there's a point where your body's just not accepting of certain foods and you literally can't eat it. And it's sometimes, I mean, it's by your own doing, but for her, it was just like her body was not accepting of food. And she was running off like, I don't even know how many calories, she was in a big deficit and she still made it 700 miles. And it's pretty incredible what she did.
Heck yeah, mama. And maybe you got to teach her the ways of Candy Mama, because it feels like maybe that's the secret sauce there. About 700 miles on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
Nothing
pretty
to
incredible.
Sneeze at. Yeah. No. So cool. And we'll come back and talk about your crew and maybe in what ways your mom was contributing to that whole effort, because I'm sure there was an amazing parallel journey evolving as you were walking your way across the eastern seaboard. The other thing I'm curious to talk to you about, I heard that you played rugby when you were younger, and I feel like that would be an interesting opportunity to just like talk about your athletic background and then, you know, how you transition that team sport experience into being the great endurance athlete you are.
Yeah. So I grew up playing soccer and I ran cross country and track. So that's kind of where the running came from. But then I went to college and was like, I don't want to play soccer anymore. I've done that for however many, 16, 15 years, however long I did that for. I want to do something new. And I had a bunch of friends who were on the men's rugby team and saw that the women were like, hey, we're accepting of some like fast people. So I joined and was fullback for 3 years. And that was an incredible experience. I mean, definitely toughened me up a lot. In soccer, you don't get touched. And if you do, it's just like a slide tackle, whatever they call it. I don't even remember what they call
slide tackle.
Yeah,
yes.
Slide tackle.
As opposed to a real tackle in rugby.
Man. Oh, that was so fun. Oh, man. I just loved chasing somebody across that field and just annihilating them with my body. And then I loved getting annihilated myself. It was just a lot of fun.
Well, you can obviously see the parallel here as you just went and annihilated yourself on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And that is but one of a number of amazing things that you've done.
It's a common thread, just, doing these things to, maximum amounts.
Yes. Actually, it reminds me of that Hunter Thompson quote that you posted on your FKT on fastestknowntime.com. We'll come around and talk about that later. One of the things that you and I were also just talking about is sort of the coaching relationship that's transformed into more of like a mentorship relationship with Carl Meltzer. And I was telling you that of course, Karl and I are longtime friends. He was one of my early inspirations in the sport, and he was among the first people to approach the Appalachian Trail in the style in which you just approached it, as being like a true high performance speed record. So I'd love to hear you just talk about your relationship with Karl and in what ways he's contributed to where you are as an athlete and specifically with the AT.
Yeah. Oh man, I love Karl so much. But I remember the first time, I remember when I think it was in between 2017, 2019, when I had that failed through hike and I was getting ready for the other one. I saw a video, I think it was that Red Bull video they did about his hike and just like seeing about his record attempt. That was incredible. Not attempt, it was his successful FKT. But I remember seeing him and it was just like, how the heck does somebody do, I don't even know his average, like 50 odd miles a day. That's incredible. And then like, as I was getting into the ultra world, after, a couple exploits on different trails, the Mountains to Sea Trail and the Appalachian Trail, I asked my friend Liz Durstein about coaching and she's like, yeah, I'm coached by Karl. And so I emailed him and he got me on board right away. And we just had this like relationship. He got me into, I did my first ultra with him. I did my first 100-miler. He encouraged me a lot. He knew how much I liked the 100-miler. So he encouraged me to race often, race a lot, and race often. So I think that first full year of racing, oh man, how many did I do? 5 100s? I think I did 4 or 5 100s in like classic Karl form. And
again, going back to the self-annihilation and the love of such activities.
Yeah. I think it was 4 or 5. I can't remember, but I remember I had just finished Run Rabbit and then I did JFK. And then he was like, hey, Tera, he emailed me. He's like, it's time to sign up for another 100. How about December Devil Dog? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I signed up for Devil Dog, did that. But yeah, so he's just been, I like his mindset where it's just like, get it done, just like do it, like no nonsense kind of mentality. And I just really connected with that a lot. And yeah. And so it kind of graduated from there. Once I started getting, on the podium more, he was just like more present in the coaching relationship. And I remember doing Run Rabbit the second time where I eventually won the race for women and, actually physically going and like chatting with him. And then like Hellbender, we like hung out a little bit. And yeah, he's just been, he's not only a, a coach and a mentor, but he's just such a fun guy. Like you hear him on like some podcasts or you hear him on like YouTube or whatever. And he kind of sounds like serious, but then you talk to him and he's just like, he's just so funny. So when we were getting ready for the Appalachian Trail, I gave him a lot of calls. I emailed, we texted a lot. And he actually helped my crew, Rascal, who I'd love to talk more about. The whole crew has such a big role in this FKT, but he had this texting relationship with Rascal and they were kind of consulting on how to get me back to where I was in, striking distance of Karel Sabbe because I was very, very far behind. So he's so present. He's so like stoked for these types of big things like the Appalachian Trail and like 100-mile distance. And luckily like our type of adventures, our type of like things that we do line up really well. So we get really stoked talking to each other.
All right. Now the email or text exchanges between Karl and Rascal need to be revealed to the public. They need to be preserved in the trail and ultra running history.
Man.
And I do plan to talk more about Rascal and Chump Change, the whole crew, because I know they've been very important to you both within this attempt and certainly obviously in your personal life as well. But maybe sticking with your background a little bit more. One of the things I find interesting is that you came from a through hiking background and then you made your way back to racing 100-milers and 100Ks and the fast stuff as you just described it. That seems like the opposite approach that a lot of people take. Karl's the perfect example, coming in from shorter distance trail running, then becoming the king of the 100-miler and then graduating to the through hiking. Have you meditated on that at all? Like the different approach that you've taken, and maybe in what ways it's helped you be successful?
A lot of people have said I've like done it backwards, but this is how my journey has gone. It went from through hiking to FKTs, and somehow I found myself here at ultra marathons and, competing pretty well at these ultra marathons. That's just the progression of it all. And it seems to work out for me. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. So you'll be eventually making your way down to like 5Ks and track 1,500 meters, whatever. Yeah. That'll be 10 years from now.
Yeah. That'd be funny.
So then going back to the origin, you already mentioned it. In 2017, you made your first attempt on the AT. You bailed after how many miles? You said like 70 miles, was it?
Yeah, it was at Bly Gap, around 80 miles in. It was right at the Georgia-North Carolina border. And I have dealt with it pretty well with the help of trails and with the help of trail running and FKTs and through hiking. But I have pretty bad anxiety, and that was not, I just ignored it when I was in 2017 after I graduated college, just ignored it, kind of pushed it back to the back of my brain. And then it kind of reemerged really dramatically during 2017 and this through hike. And I had a panic attack all by myself on this mountain. I had a migraine. I woke up and I had this migraine and I had chest pains and couldn't quite get my breathing under control, and panicked, had to call my grandparents, who luckily lived about an hour away, and they came and picked me up. And I was like, vowed I'm never through hiking again. That was a bad decision. Did not have fun. Obviously that's not how the story went, but yeah, it's definitely come full circle since 2017. Was it
something about the loneliness and exposure on the trail that you think contributed to the panic attack, or?
I think I was super focused on Katahdin, which is really difficult to have this goal, this huge goal, and every day you're focused on Katahdin and you're not focused on, the scenery around you. Making it to North Carolina could have been a big, short-term goal that I look forward to and celebrated, but I didn't celebrate it fully. I was just so focused on making it to the end and, that challenge aspect. I just want to conquer the trail. I just want to be a through hiker of the AT, and I wasn't enjoying the trail the way it deserved.
So coming back in 19, redeemed yourself with your husband, I believe, right?
Yeah,
You made the trek in 5 months, again, at a much more civilized pace than you just did it. Did that feel like you had officially exercised the demon? And was that where the seed was officially planted that I want to come back and do this much faster?
No, I just wanted, so I got out there, had the best time, met Rascal, met so many good friends out there. It was just the best time. That I like to say that's where I peaked in life, is during this through hike of the AT. I've had a lot of things that have been great in my life, but I think that is truly where I peaked. Even now, even after this FKT, I'm like, yeah, that through hike was definitely my peak in life. So I just wanted to through hike again after that. That's what I wanted to do. But then, it's 2019, the next year is 2020, and we all know what happened. And I wanted to through hike the Mountains of Sea Trail. And that is 1,175 miles across the state of North Carolina, and realized couldn't do that in a responsible way, and decided to do FKTs, were blowing up at that point. And I was also working for Jen Pharr-Davis, who holds who held the women's record, but back then held the overall record of the AT. And so I was incredibly inspired by her. Also wanted to do this hike, wanted to do it responsibly. And the FKT just kind of lined up with it. And, that's where that went. And then I kind of got into 100-mile races after that. But the spark of where I was I think I want to go for the Appalachian Trail quicker. I had a couple friends. I had Karl, I had Warren Doyle, who I met. I had Jen, who I had met, Liz Durstein. I had all of these people that were iconic in the Appalachian Trail FKT realm. And it was always in the back of my head, but I did the Benton MacKaye Trail FKT. I set the overall record, and that's about 280. And that is the first proposed route of the Appalachian Trail. And they decided to go, a different direction with it. But these trails kind of meet up with each other. It's the first proposed route. It's very similar terrain. And I finished that. And I was like, at the end, I was like, well, obviously I'm sore and I'm tired, but I could probably keep going. Like, I feel okay to keep going. And that's where the idea was like, well, you never know if you don't try. Like, the Appalachian Trail is it's the home. It's my home. That's where I feel the most myself. So I was like, well, maybe I could go for that and we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll go terribly, but also maybe it won't.
Tell me more about your relationship with Jen Pharr Davis.
Yeah. Well, I started working for her in 2020, and
what does that mean? What kind of business is that?
Yeah, sorry. I was her backpacking guide. I was one of her backpacking guides for her guiding company. So I did a lot of trips out of Hot Springs, through to Max Patch and through the Smoky Mountains. Did a lot of guiding that summer, and also I was her hostel caretaker. So I was just somebody at this hostel that took care of people and, took their money and gave them a bed and, set down the rules, and then sometimes worked at her gear shop. But yeah, it was getting to know Jen was really great. Obviously, she's a very busy woman. If you know Jen, if you've ever met her, I mean, she is on the go. She has 2 kids. She has a husband. She is a businesswoman, but she still made time for me. I remember I told her about the Mountains of Sea Trail and how I wanted to do that. And she took time out of her day. We walked down to this river, and her kids were flipping rocks looking for salamanders. And we were just chatting about, what this FKT would look like. And that was fun. And I actually remember calling her on a particular hot day on the Mountains of Sea Trail and just like, this is so hard. And, all the regular things you're going through on a hot day during an FKT. And she just encouraged me to keep going through it and pushing through it and normalizing all of those feelings. So definitely thankful for her. And I mean, I have benefited so greatly from all of these women who've come before me, like Heather Anderson and Heather Onish Anderson and Jen Pharr Davis and Courtney. All of these women are so inspiring. And I mean, she's just part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And her story from back in 2011 was one of the early inspirations for me and for a lot of the people who now approach these long trails in the style in which you did over the course of the last month or so. Tell me more about this Mountain to Sea Trail FKT, because to me, as I look at your accomplishments over time, that one feels to me like it was kind of the first indication of what you were potentially going to be capable of on the AT. And I'm sure it came with many painful learning experiences also, but tell me about that one and in what way maybe it showed you what you were capable of.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Rascal was with me for that. We also had Ryan, who was with us for most of the time. And my mom was there on weekends, but it was basically, I would just describe it as suffering the entire time. It was my first FKT. I don't know why. My first FKT, I was like, let's do the 1,175 mile trail. Like, that sounds great. Didn't have any clue of, I had a nutrition background of a thru-hiker. And if you know a thru-hiker diet, it's a lot of candy. It's a lot of not substance, nothing that's going to keep you going. Somehow on a thru-hike that works, but on an FKT, it does not work. And I lost so much weight. I became iron deficient. I had intentions of running the entire thing, but about middle of the way, I stopped running because every time I ran for about 10 seconds, I felt like I was going to fall over and faint. I like to say my brain was just scrambled eggs. And I thought this was all normal. This is fine. This is just how FKTs are supposed to be. And they're not. I know that now. But I basically suffered the entire time for 29 days.
Yeah, I mean, well, so that's a 1,200 mile trail. It took you almost a month, but probably gave you a lot of new tactical learnings and a new approach that you mapped to the Appalachian Trail. And of course, the Colorado Trail too. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but it feels like that was a great dress rehearsal for the AT. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I started that self-supported, so it felt a little different, and we had to go to supported eventually. I started out with my hiking partner, Liz Durstein, and she had to get off, so we had to switch to supported just because of the nature of, emotional support. So we had to go to supported, and she conjured up this crew, and we made it to the end in the fastest time supported for women, and that was incredible. But I mean, that was really hard too. And there's long, long sections where you don't see your crew. And yeah, I don't have much to say about that. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful trail. I would probably go back though and try to, reset a record of some sort.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, there's been a lot of action on that Colorado Trail recently, hasn't there? Speaking of Colorado, all right, but this is the last thing before we start getting to the AT itself. Obviously, you did Hardrock this summer. I think it was only 3 weeks before you started the AT, and I wondered if that was strategic or if it was just by virtue of the fact that when you get into Hardrock, you have to do Hardrock, and the AT was the main goal. So talk about Hardrock, the strategy behind it, how it impacted you physically, psychologically before the AT attempt?
Yeah, I was crewing Carl with his wife at Devil Dog in December, and we were watching all of the lottery for Hardrock, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to get in. Get a text from my friend. She's like, congratulations, you got in. I was like, oh crap, like the Appalachian Trail. Like that was my first thought. I was extremely thankful. Oh my gosh, like that is the dream race. That was the dream race. Still continues to be a dream race. I want to go back every single year. But also right after that, Carl got in. So he comes into this crew area and we're like, hey, I got in and you got in. He's like, oh crap, now I have to train for it as he's in the middle of Devil Dog 100. So I, had Hardrock. You can't not do Hardrock if you get picked for it. There's like no way I'm not going to do Hardrock. And I also wanted to do the Appalachian Trail. And there were so many people that were telling me, they're like, that's not a good idea to do Hardrock so close to the Appalachian Trail. Usually the idea is a lot of these people take, a couple months off before the Appalachian Trail and just have a fully 100% body. And I was like, well, doesn't seem that anyone's ever done a 100-mile race so close to the Appalachian Trail and FKT on the Appalachian Trail. So I was like, well, maybe this will work out for me. Maybe this is like a new method. Like, you don't know. And that's just a theme. You never know if you don't try. So maybe that's going to be great. And it ended up being awesome because I was, I had the altitude under my belt. I was acclimated to 10,000 feet, staying in Silverton, and I had my mountain leg. So I had a lot of time on feet. Obviously, I had to fully recover before the Appalachian Trail, but I felt like I had this great training leading into the FKT.
Did it impact the day that you started the AT attempt? And maybe you could say a few words about the recovery in between and how you assessed, okay, body's good enough to begin this 2,000 plus mile journey.
Yeah, I originally wanted to start in July because you want to get the most sunlight in your days. That is a big strategy you'll see in a lot of FKTers on the AT. It's like June, July, either you're walking into all of this daylight or you're, starting when it's maximum daylight. So I wanted to do that and then decided to push it back a month for that full recovery. And that's basically it. I just decided, I think it ended up being just under 30 days from when I started the AT, from when I finished Hardrock. So it was very strategic to do that.
And you probably had to then coordinate with all your crew and stuff. Hey, we're bumping this back a month. Yeah, and hopefully it works with your schedule too.
I found out in December, so I hadn't quite planned when I was going to start. I knew it was going to be around in July. But yeah, I had to, at that point, tell them. And luckily it was Rascal who works seasonal jobs. So she was able to just come whenever. And then my mom, who is retired by now.
Thank God for Rascal and your mom. Yeah. All right. So the decision to go southbound, I'm sure this is a very intentional thing that probably requires a lot of consideration. Both Karl and Scott Jurek went northbound. So can you talk about the consideration and why you decided to go southbound?
Yeah, there is a couple schools of thought there with going SOBO or NOBO. And my thought with going Sobo, I know personally, I tend to look into the future a lot. That's part of anxiety. It's like you're looking into the future. And I knew if I had the White Mountains and Maine, which are the hardest, I mean, no doubt the hardest part of the trail, if I had those looming in the distance at the end of this FKT, I would just constantly be thinking about it. So I knew personally, like I just had to get these over with and get it done with. I also, with starting in August, I wanted to get, through those, like, I mean, I don't think it would be like too cold, but I wanted to get through and kind of walk with the season. There is people who go Nobo. They think that their idea behind it is they're kind of walking into fitness. So by the time they get to the Whites in Maine, they're going to be fit enough to like get through pretty quickly. So there's a couple of schools of thought there. I just know personally I wanted to get them done soon.
That feels like a semi-profound statement of anxiety being, I don't know, exacerbated, or I guess the main character trait there is that you're looking into the future. Have you, and it seems like when you're on the AT, it'd be very difficult not to think about the future and not to think about the immensity of the challenge that still lies ahead, even when you're days and weeks into the journey.
Yeah.
Have you developed any tools for staying in the present and not looking into the future and thus mitigating anxiety?
I mean, I don't know how I do it, but that's just one of the things I've learned through the trails is just staying in the moment and staying in that mile and making it the best mile you can. I think I've just like through experience, I've learned like that is really all you can do. You can't look into the future. There's nothing it's not going to help you. It's not going to fix anything to just worry about it. So I think just from experience and just the knowledge, I just can reiterate to myself that you gotta stay in the here and now. Obviously, like, I don't think I could have done that with the Whites in Maine. I think just knowing that it was coming would always be in the back of my head. And that's why I chose to go Southbound. I know what's best for me just through that experience. So, there is a lot of benefit from these like failed, I always say this, like failed attempts, like failed races or failed FKTs or thru hikes, like they're all adding to this experience and hopefully like a positive result.
So something that could have been anxiety inducing also was that it feels like you fell behind immediately on Karl's pace, which you were explicitly chasing. So as you were traversing Maine and New Hampshire and the White Mountains, you probably were confronting the reality of like, oh no, I can't keep pace with the ghost of Karel Sabbe, who was the FKT holder. Was that anxiety inducing? How do you deal with that psychologically?
Yeah, well, I didn't really think about that because I had a goal. I had like, I made a 10-day plan for my crew. And with that 10-day plan, I know for some reason I did the math wrong, but it was like, okay, you'd only be 35 miles behind when you get to Hanover, which is like where the trail, like that is, I mean, it doesn't get, the trail's always hard, but that's, officially where it's going to be like a little smoother. And so I made this 10-day plan going to Hanover. And by the time I get there, I would be 35 miles behind. And I knew like, oh, I could like nickel and dime here. So I wasn't like, there was one day where I did 4 less miles. So I was like, okay, I can like do, 39, 40 miles behind. But then there was a point I asked Rascal when she was pacing me one day, I was like, so like where we are in the record, like, what do I need to do? She's like, oh, I'll look into that. She comes back to me and she's like, well, I don't know if she told me the number, but she said it was like close to 200 miles behind. I don't remember what it was, but I was really, really far behind at that point. And I just was like, well, that's it. That's all. I'm just going for Sobo or like women's, which are incredibly hard records. It's not easy work, still very hard work to get the Sobo or the women's record. Like those are incredibly stout, but I was just like, well, I have to give up on that. But I put my crew in place for a reason. I put Rascal in that place for a reason. I made my goals very explicit to them and set them up with, we call it the Trail Bible and, special contacts. And I I don't think I gave up, but I just like gave up control. And she was like, all right, we're behind. We're going to get back there and we're going to do everything it takes to get there. And she really, really put me through it and it worked out. I mean, if it wasn't for Rascal, if it wasn't for the crew, my mom, my pacers, I wouldn't have this result.
Gave up control feels like another profound lesson from this whole adventure. Okay, introduce us more to Rascal.
Oh man, Rascal's the best. I love Rascal. I mean, it's in the name. I met her in Pennsylvania on our thru hike and we just became the best of friends. And we've gone on many adventures together and she's like extremely goofy and just like sometimes she can be so annoying and in the best ways. But she's like one of my best friends, just always a good time, always the best vibes, really appreciate her friendship. But, you know, beyond that, she like puts on this front of, you know, silly, goofy Rascal. But under all of this, I mean, when there's a goal, when there's like this type, the FKT on the Appalachian Trail, I mean, she's zoned in completely. She is, she knows the goal. She knows what it takes to get me there. She knows me very well. And she is just, you know, a legend in, you know, this logistical nightmare that was the Appalachian Trail. I think she's just like I think she's going to be like the new guru of the Appalachian Trail. There's several people out there, you know, you go to that for like advice on an FKT. And I've gone to a bunch of them like Iceman and Warren Doyle. And I think she's just like that new guru. But she is under this like silly facade. She's just, you know, incredibly determined and focused. And I can't thank her enough for everything she did. She's incredible person.
Rascal the guru. And every guru needs to have a Bible. So what is the Trail Bible?
Yeah, I have it right here. It's the Trail Bible. It's this ginormous piece of cardboard and paper. And for those that are listening to the podcast, it's about, what is that, like 1.5 inches big of just paper. So I constructed that before I got on trail. I have every single road crossing in there with, you know, if it's accessible, if it has parking for like 2 or more vehicles. I have trail angels in there. I contacted a bunch of people along the trail to see if they would want to come out and help. We had a lot of help. I have crew stops. I have every single town and the amenities that they have. I have a game plan. Oh, there's so much in there.
So that is effectively the crew instructions that you provided to Rascal, your mom, and the rest of the people who are shepherding you along the way.
Yeah.
How long did that project take to create the Trail Bible? I mean, that alone feels like an FKT worthy undertaking.
I feel like I worked on it off and on for about a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the effort itself. When were you able to start turning things around? Because you mentioned Warren Doyle, and after those first 10 days, according to his calculations, it seemed like you were 100 miles behind. Mm-hmm. You gave up control, as you just said. You focused on the effort. When were you able to turn it around, or when did you have a sense that you were turning it around?
Oh, I gave up all autonomy. I let them choose what I'd eat, when I'd sleep, where I'd sleep, you know, when I'd use the bathroom, what I would, you know, who is going to be with me on this pacing section. I lost all control. When I say I was the race car, I was literally just a object going along the trail. They were the ones fueling me. They're the ones, you know, maintaining my body, the ones handing me food and watering me. So, I mean, you even like kind of outsourced the strategic element of it too. So they would kind of tell you where you would stop and sleep for the night. Yeah. I didn't make any choices. When I got on the trail, I was just this race car, and Rascal calls me the queen, but I was like, I like I like the race car better because I was just this thing going down the trail. And I've noticed myself dismissing my efforts because it was hard and I did have to dig deep sometimes. And I did have to work extremely hard to get this record just on my own. But I think like a big aspect was this crew and these pacers. And I forgot the original question that you asked, actually.
Well, I mean, to me, that feels like maybe an important lesson from this also, and that the mental energy that you would have otherwise had to expend yourself on the strategic element of it and where am I going to sleep and all the small decisions that probably go into each and every day. By offloading that, you do become an object, you do become a race car, and it probably does help accelerate you along the race track, so to speak.
Yeah. I just lost all autonomy. I didn't have any decision-making power. Rascal was truly manager of chaos, the decision maker. She was crew chief. She was at the top and we were all just like doing what she said. And so like, it was around New York and New Jersey where we started ramping up the miles a lot. I remember in Connecticut, I did my first 60-mile day and I just was like, I don't know if I can do this day after day. Like, I don't know if I could, because at that time, Carl was like, you're going to have to do 56 miles a day. And Rascal was like, we're going to do a couple more than 56 because you want to have that buffer just in case if it's bad weather or injury or whatever, we want to have that buffer. So we were sitting at about 58-ish miles a day when we got into like New York, New Jersey. And I remember her walking out with me. And there was times where I was just angry with Rascal. I was like, I can't do this. I can't, what are you thinking? I can't do this amount of miles a day. Are you crazy? And I just remember her saying like, I know you can do it. We're going to go for this record. We're fully invested. I know you can do it. But I just need you to believe that you can do it. And that took a really, really long time, extremely long time. And I had to give up control and just do what she said.
It's so cool. So there's also the philosophy of the trail provides. What does that mean? And can you provide an example? That would help people who aren't part of the thru-hiking subculture understand what that means?
I mean, it's just like the trail just provides whatever you need it to provide, and somehow it just works out. And, oftentimes it doesn't work out. But when it does work out, as you kind of you say like, well, that's just the trail. It's just providing for us. And I felt like after the whites were really messy and it was really difficult. It took me a while to like recover from the whites. Being the hardest part of the trail, but also the weather. But after that, I think we had 2 days with rainy mornings. And that was just like an example, like the trail just provided us with this extremely good weather window and, a lot of people coming out, trail angels, which are just people who just come out and give you food or good energy. So I would just say it's just like this, Rascal's more spiritual than I am, and she's much more fun. So if she was on this interview, she would have a better way of describing it. But it's just like this trust in the trail and what it can give to you.
Well, maybe, and I don't want to be the spiritual consultant here, but maybe letting go and releasing the need to control the effort and not looking forward, which I know is something that has created anxiety in the past. Maybe that is an example of the trail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Providing.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so back to this Warren Doyle guy. I don't know anything about him, so you could say something about him. But from your fastest known time post, I'm just going to read something here and you can respond to it. This is from Warren Doyle. He says, after her first 10 days, she was about 100 miles behind Carl. So in the first 10 days, Tera averaged 42.7 miles per day, where Carl averaged 54.4 miles a day. So 8 miles more per day. And then in the following 26 days, Tera averaged 56.4 to Carl's 53.3. So then you average 3 miles per day for the final 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about Warren Doyle, his calculations, and and just like, I don't know, how things evolve, because now in retrospect, and you have some perspective, maybe the slow first 10 days were a blessing, especially coming off of Hardrock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Warren is definitely one of those trail gurus. I think he's hiked the trail 18 and a half times. So he knows it very, very well.
My God. Is he ever not on the trail, for God's sakes?
I think he's ended his through hikes, but yeah, he did the first FKT in the 60s. So he's a pretty old guy. So I don't think he's just like providing support these days. He's very spry though for his age and all of the through hikes that he's done. What was the original question?
Well, I mean, just if you look at how it played out, and with Warren's calculations here, it does feel like the slow moving terrain in Maine and the whites and the bad weather may have provided the urgency, but maybe also a certain level of freshness to springboard you to a very fast last 3.5 weeks.
Yeah. That could be like the new way of doing this, because Karel Sabbe, when he got to the whites, he just took off. I mean, I think he had like 2 50-mile days in there, which is insane to think about. I can't imagine doing a 50-mile day in the whites. Maybe completely fresh, I could, but not at the end of a through hike. But yeah, maybe that is like the new mentality, just nickel and diming. That's what Carl Meltzer always says, nickel and diming. When you get to like, I'm doing quotations here, like bunny ears, like easier. It's never easy, but compared to the whites in southern Maine, it's a little easier terrain in like Connecticut, and you get through some of New Jersey, and like Pennsylvania is generally flat, but it has a lot of rocks. And, Virginia, when you get to those states, like just, putting your foot on the gas and just letting yourself kind of ease in when you're in the whites in Maine and easing into the effort. It took a lot of effort in the whites in Maine though. Like I like to say I was completely demoralized after the whites. The weather was terrible. I remember, the last full day in the whites in the Kinsmans, and I just like trip and fall. It's raining. I trip and fall and just fall into this mud pit, and just mud splashes up on my face. And I'm just like, this is the lowest. This is my low right here. And it took a couple of days to fully recover from the whites. And after that, I remember I thought this for a minute. It sounds so dumb, but I thought like in Connecticut, I was like, oh, this is easy. But that was when I was on this flat Greenway trail. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be easy compared to the whites, but that might like be the new mentality. There's so many different strategies when it comes to the AT. But I think some people have just like stuck to the same old for a little bit. And I think it's refreshing to have this new strategy going into it, and it worked too.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the numbers, Carl was effectively consistent at 53, 54 miles a day, where you upped your average by 12 whole miles in the last 3/4 of it. Maybe speaking more specifically about the character of the trail. Of course, for those of us who are West Coast centric, who haven't spent a lot of time on the AT, I've heard people characterize it as the green tunnel. And if you think about it in comparison to the PCT, what I know about the PCT is that there are very specific sections like the Mojave, the Sierra, the North Cascades. You've mentioned the whites, obviously, a number of times, but in any way that you could take us West Coasters or those who haven't been on the trail and kind of describe the character of it.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I think I'd like to give people from the West Coast or like Colorado a lot of crap. I'm like, you guys don't understand hard trail. Like,
yeah, see, I've heard it's like way harder. Yeah, way slower.
Yeah, they call it Beast Coast for a reason. It's, there's sections that are so easy, but then there's like, the East Coast is difficult, especially when you're in New England, when you're in New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont, oh my gosh, these trails are so hard. There's rocks and there's roots, and it's not just regular old rocks. Like you're not just jumping over a rock. No, you're like going down a straight, it feels like a cliff. You're just hiking down a cliff, and sometimes like you trip and fall and you bang yourself up in the whites, and it's so rugged. It's so extremely rugged. You can't keep a solid pace, and you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I could like sprint up there. There is no solid pace in especially like New England. So I like to give a lot of people crap because they don't give us as much I'm from the East Coast, and I know a lot of people from the East Coast. We're tough. We've been through it. But so you have like New England, which is just, really difficult. Connecticut's a little easier. Massachusetts, like, getting a little easier. Then you get into like, Pennsylvania and New Jersey and New York and, Maryland, and those are a little easier, but you have like a lot of rocks in Pennsylvania. And then just Virginia is the longest state on the Appalachian Trail. And it's beautiful, buttery trail mixed in with some like really tough climbs like the Priest and Three Ridges, and a couple others. It's just really intense climbs, one after the other after the other. And the thing about the Appalachian Trail, most of it, the people who made the trail don't really believe in switchbacks. So you're just walking straight up a mountain, and then you get to the top of this mountain, you have zero views. So like most times when you're in the West Coast or in Colorado, you walk to the top of this mountain and it's like, wow, this is so rewarding. There's nothing. It's a green tunnel, like you mentioned. There's no views. Then you just have to go all the way back down. No switchbacks. Sometimes there's switchbacks, but most of the times you're going straight down, and then you go straight back up again. And it's just repeating that. I think you climb Mount Everest 16 times on the Appalachian Trail. So it's unrelenting.
And I don't know, to me, that adds to the maybe spiritual religious experience that you have out there, and that you aren't rewarded with grand West Coast views of these big mountain ranges, but instead you have to go internal and focus on your feet and the rocks underneath it. And
there is a lot of biodiversity out there. So I'd say that's really rewarding. So many salamanders. There's the red Fs that are just adorable. Lots of snakes and animals, and a lot of different just plant life. But just to give you an example, JP Giblin was with us from New York to the end, and he's, Boulder boy. Yeah. And he was like, what the heck is this trail? What is this? This sucks.
And Boulder's pretty rocky too. So that says something. Another thing I'd love to ask you about is just to the extent you felt the energy of your momentum on the trail. I'm sure you were passing through hikers. Mm-hmm. I spent a day with Timothy Olson when he was on the PCT, and his reputation had preceded him, that everybody was hearing about the Mirage, which was his trail name.
Oh, I love that.
And so when we would pass, people would be like, oh, is that the guy who's doing it? And so I wondered if you had experienced anything similar, or, if there were any fun exchanges with the people who were moving much more slowly than you were.
Yeah, I love the thru-hikers so much. They're so fun. But northbound hikers were pretty much just in Maine and New Hampshire. And after that, I saw a couple in Vermont. But I definitely received a lot of energy from them and excitement. Every time I'd pass one, they would know like what's going on. They would get really excited and just share their energy with me, which was really exciting. And then I saw, a couple of Sobo hikers, which, those guys are hardened to the trail. I don't think a lot of them knew really what was going on. There was a couple, but then I saw a lot of section hikers and day hikers. But I think, was he going north?
He was going northbound.
Yeah. So I think he was running with, I think he was kind of in that perfect window of thru-hikers. Yeah. But I didn't have like a whole lot of thru-hikers. There was, most of the trail, I didn't see any.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So on the tactical side of things, I read that you would wake up at 3:00 in the morning. You're hiking by 3:30. The race car's on the track until probably 8 or 9 p.m., which obviously doesn't leave a lot of room for self-care, for sleeping. So I'm sure the audience would just love to hear you talk about, the tactical side of things, outside of being the race car on the track. What were you doing to take care of yourself? What did your sleep look like? Things like that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a lot of time to take care of myself. There was often days, this might be disgusting, but often days, I would forget to brush my teeth for about, at most, I think it was like 2 days. But there was moments where my crew would remember, and we'd walk with a toothbrush and they'd bring it back to the crew area. It's just like, it's hard to remember to do any of that stuff. My hair ended up I only took 3 showers. That's another part of it. For 40 days, it was just 3 showers. But my hair would become so matted in my head. I would have to have Amy, who huge help to the crew. Amy and Steve I took 2 showers in their van. If it wasn't for them, I would have only 1 shower the entire time. So I was able to shower right on trail, which was I was really thankful for. But like, she would brush out my hair after these showers, and it just took so long. In the mornings, I'd wake up at 3 and be going by 3:30. But Rascal, I had my crew basically hand feed me, and I could work on my feet. So that's another thing. Losing autonomy. They would hand feed me whatever it was at crew stops. I could eat a snack on the go as I was hiking, but oftentimes they were hand feeding me when I was at crew areas or in the mornings or at night, just so I could get other things, do other things. And so hand fed breakfast by Rascal. So silly. But it helped. And I'd be on the go. I'd do some leg swings before I'd start my day. And honestly, it was just me hiking, moving all day until about 9, around 8:30 was really good, but it was anywhere from 8:30 to 10 that I would end my days. And in between there would just be about an average of 6 crew stops. So I'd see the crew, and I'd either get a new pacer with some food or some water, and just be on my way for however many hours that was. And so it was Karel Sabbe. I was a student of his. I just listened to everything. I read everything that he was in. I just really took on a lot of his tactics from his Appalachian Trail FKT and PCT FKT. And something he said is you want to stay as consistent as possible to an average daily mileage. So it wasn't the case in the beginning, but once we started getting into the latter part of the trail, we did a lot of camping, and it was pretty much about half and half towards the end of the trail, or towards about New York and on, is about half and half, where we slept in the tent or we slept in the van. So what that would look like is JP and Rascal would hike up camping gear, and they would get me ready for the night, and I would go to sleep by 9:30, 10:30. And if we were lucky enough to make it to a road crossing, I would sleep in the van and have the entire crew there to do whatever we needed to do to get me on the trail the next day. So that's, again, so crucial to have, somebody like Rascal or JP climb up mountains with packs and pack out camping gear.
So cool. Before we got started, you were talking about just the compounding sleep deprivation. How do you deal with that? Because for the audience, obviously they're doing the math. If you're falling asleep at 10 o'clock, waking up at 3, hiking 50, 60 miles a day, you're sleeping 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
It feels unsustainable and probably takes a toll over time.
Yeah. So there's a couple mentalities. Karel Sabbe was definitely a fast runner and hiker, and he was able to get through the days quicker. So he averaged 7 hours of sleep a night. I'm not as quick as him, and I knew I was hoping I would be quick, but I knew I'm going to have to sacrifice something, and sleep was that something. And it ended up being okay for the first bit, but then I really started noticing the compounding exhaustion and just there was so many mornings that were just so difficult to get going and like keep a solid pace. And it's just like your eyes were so heavy and it's like a zombie walk. It's nothing like I've ever experienced. Like the Mountains of Sea Trail, Bet McKay Trail, like never experienced this type of exhaustion. And by the time the sun came up, it got a little better, but then it would hit like a midday wave of exhaustion. And oftentimes I would do about a 1.5 minute nap in the dirt. that was my, that was a sweet spot, was 1.5 minutes of dirt nap. And towards the end, it got really bad because I did a 129-mile push in 43 hours and change. And I was just, completely decimated. I was a shell of who I am. And a couple tactics that worked for me was my friend Hunter. He is very experienced with sleep deprivation, but he said, like, always be chewing on something. Like that's going to keep your brain going. So there was times where I was just like, falling asleep in the middle of the night walking, and he came up to me and just would hand feed me a Twizzler. He just shove it in my mouth, be like, chew on this for a while, don't swallow it, just chew on it. It's like so alarming. I'm like, Hunter, no. But it worked. It worked.
That's interesting. What a useful hack.
Yeah. What else worked for me? Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I had to do caffeine pills towards the end, but it was crazy. There was a point where they just felt like they weren't working. Like these 100, 200 milligram caffeine pills just weren't working. So we just had to come up with a lot of different tactics. I poured a lot of water on myself. I would just spray myself with a water bottle, go in a creek and get myself wet. And that kind of kept me awake for a little bit. But yeah, the compounding exhaustion just really took it out of me. I think it would take it out of anyone.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so we can start winding down, but I would love to hear you just meditate on the finish. And also, you did break Karl's record and he posted a beautiful tribute to your accomplishment. And it's very interesting to hear you say that you realize you had to sacrifice something. That something ended up being sleep, but that sacrifice was well made in the end. So tell us about that, the feeling of finishing, how you're feeling a couple days later, and if you and Karl have had any fun exchanges.
Oh, I would love to email him or just talk to him on the phone. He's a really good person. I mean, I just from his podcast and
he's
just
a
like
legend
his posts,
too.
He is legend, good guy, good guy. When I finished, I didn't allow myself to get to that point until the very, very end, about 3 miles out, because I'd fall so violently on the trail that I was so nervous I was going to, break my kneecap or dislocate my shoulder. These falls are just so bad. You can just ask any of my pacers. And so I thought with like 3 miles left, I was like, well, at least I could like crawl to the finish. There's that. So when I got to the finish, it was extremely overwhelming. I don't think I understood like the magnitude of what I did because I was sleep deprived and I was just like in this like weird in between space, just floating in this like between consciousness and non-consciousness. Like, where am I? What's going on? So I don't think I really realized what I did until it was verified about 3 or 4 days later. And it was like, I saw my name up there with all of these legends. I'm like, wow, I just did that. It obviously wasn't just me, the crew, Chump Change. We just freaking did it. And it was like 13 and a half hours. It's like, that's a
big margin, right?
It is. Yeah. It's unreal.
Because I remember when Scott Jurek got the record, it was only by 3 hours and it was a nail biter. Like I had friends who were out on the trail with him and nobody was confident until like literally the last mile.
Yeah. Incredible. I mean, to do what he did and just have confidence and keep going and be like, I'm going to do it by 3 hours. That's incredible. Yeah. So 13 and a half hours, I don't think it really like resonated with me until like I was somewhat recovered mentally. And I don't know, I'm really stoked for, I think I'm the most stoked for like women and how this is going to impact women in endurance. I partnered with Girls on the Run, and we're almost at 50,000. So if anyone wants to donate, would love that. Please, 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 please donate. We're almost there.
Yes.
Ultra's going to match all the donations. So if we could get 100,000, that would be stellar. But I think I'm like, the aspect of this that I'm just most stoked for is just like women and what this is going to do for our sport. I think I've benefited greatly from all these women inspirations, like Jasmine Paris too. I talked about Anish, and I've talked about Jen and Courtney, but like, I mean, seeing Jasmine Paris, what she did, just knowing what that did for me, I think that had a big reason why I felt so confident going into the Appalachian Trail. So I'm hoping that this does inspire women and girls. I think we are just these powerhouses of endurance, and I don't think we fully tapped into it. I think we're there, we're on the cusp, but I think we are like getting into like what women are possible in endurance. And I'm so excited to see us push the limits and see what's possible.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, Free Trail is going to be making a donation to Girls on the Run, and we will include a link in the show notes of this episode.
So exciting.
Before we wind down, I'm just going to read what Karl posted about you, and then we'll sort of start winding this down here. What Karel Sabbe said, again, the former FKT holder on the Appalachian Trail. He said, I'm happy to pass on the fastest known time on the Appalachian Trail to the incredible Tera Dower. 2024 is shaping up to be an amazing year where more and more people, especially women, are realizing just how strong they are in the world of ultra running. In fact, they are every bit as powerful as their male counterparts, if not stronger. In our sport, it's not just about speed. It's about determination, enduring pain, and overcoming sleep deprivation. Athletes like Tera Dower, Jasmine Paris, and Courtney Dauwalter show us the true potential we can reach when we set our minds to something. What an inspiration.
Wow. Wow.
What a good guy. The Belgian dentist, Karel Sabbe, PCT, FKT holder, Barkley Marathons finisher, paying tribute to Tera Dower, the new Appalachian Trail FKT holder. If you feel free to respond, and then I, of course, want to ask you whether or not you are indeed going to line up at Javelina because you're signed up for it on Ultra Sign Up, you psychopath.
Well, just talking about Karl's post, it's like, it's so unreal to like have my name next to Courtney's and like Jasmine's name. And I don't think I've like, I've struggled ever since 2017 just with that like confidence, and to like finally be here is just surreal. It's just so surreal. And I hope more women take inspiration from that. But also, Javelina, no. No, absolutely not. No, I was like, how silly would that be? And I'd probably grunt it out and just like finish the race. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I have worked hard enough. I don't need to do that. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to support JP and my friend Rascal and Reese as they do the night run, and JP's going for that golden ticket. But I'm going to go out there and have fun and not race or run or do anything of physical activity.
Well deserved, but I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I'm going to be there too. And I was thinking that my Halloween costume might be Tera Dower from 2023's Javelina, but that would require me to stick a bunch of cactuses in myself. And I'm not sure if I'm tough enough.
It's really easy. They just attach really easily, as I know. They're just on you in seconds.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So I end all these podcasts with the same closing question, but before I get to that, I want to read what you posted also on the fastest known time post, because I think it's perfect. You can respond to it, and then we'll get to the final closing question. This is a quote from Hunter S. Thompson, the absolute legend of American literature. He says, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride.'" Feels like a great encapsulation of a perfect life philosophy, but probably also the AT adventure in itself.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just that through line in my life is that challenging, the aspect of challenges, and just like, I think living this life and just trying to live the heck out of it, man. I mean, what better way to live than to do an FKT on the Appalachian Trail?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So my final closing question to you here, Tera, that I ask everybody on the show is, who is one person that you admire, can be inside or outside of sport, living or dead? Why do you admire that person?
Oh, there's so many people I admire. Oh man. I mean, it's just going to have to be, it's been this for a while, but just Courtney. I wonder how many people have said that. I mean, it's just a true testament to who she is as a person, so humble and just a crusher. And I've just used her as, inspiration since 2020. Obviously, I mean, it's got to be Courtney.
Yeah, it's funny now, and that feels like the appropriate, perfect place to end. And it reminds me of the video that Solomon made about her this summer, where she uses the metaphor of a stepladder and her amazing career and accomplishments, just providing the foundation to inspire other women to take things on themselves. And of course, she just lost her course record at UTMB, and there was nobody more gracious and more congratulatory to Katie Scheid than Courtney Dauwalter.
Oh, yeah.
And now here she is inspiring you to use that stepladder to go break an iconic long trail FKT. And always provides a great example, as you do too, Tera. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. She's incredible. Love her.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, congratulations on this incredible achievement. I hope you get some rest. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and look forward to hanging out at Javelina.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.